This program might contain strong language. If you think you may be offended, switch off now.
Its flavor. I long to live inside your heart so tender, to hold the time we shared and always remember.
Hello there, everybody. Welcome to Watch Mojo's Inside Podcast. Ash, this is some great music. Is this your creation?
Well, technically it's a collective. This is translating, reimagining Iranian songs into English. So this is actually a song from Mahasti, who is like, a legend, and she's like our Céline Dion style. I mean, we have Gugu, her sister Hediye. So this is a song I translated in the summer, and was trying to reach out to her daughter because she's, Mahasti is deceased for many years. To kind of get her blessing and whatnot. But this week and this month with what's happening in Iran, I decided to release the demo. But you also obviously helped. You obviously helped with this because we could talk about it more afterwards.
Yeah, but, for sure.
So you could check out. I think if somebody wants to add the playlist, it's a banger. It was like it's a reimagine like Miley Cyrus or Evanescence, so it's
definitely an interesting project and timely considering what's been going on in Iran, but we'll get to all that. The topic of this week's Inside Podcast is activism. Yeah. So we're going to be talking about, the good, bad, and the ugly of activism, when it's useful, when it's not. And there's a lot of interesting case studies to get into, but what a busy week it's been. There's been a lot going on. Last week we had the WEF meeting, which we covered with a Watch Mojo video. There's been no shortage of news out of Iran and extending across the world. There was the daughter of what military person was it? Who got fired?
One of like the Islamic Republic of Iran's politicians, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is like this parallel force, which is even bigger than the military, the Artesh. So, she was basically a doctor at Emory University's hospital. It does raise a lot of interesting kind of ethical points because, in the article that I wrote to Emory, I kind of said, look, I'm not here to generally attack a doctor, but I was like, this is really not about that. This is, the daughter of somebody who is basically bragging about implementing a TNM style Chinese crackdown that even the Islamic Republic's own health ministry says has killed 30,000 people. So considering you can't trust anything that comes out of that government, if they say it's 30,000 people, I mean, the official one is 3,000, but that's laughable. It's definitely more than 3,000. So if the health ministry says 30,000, that number is probably about 50,000, maybe even 80,000. And, again, just being a history guy, like during World War II, from 1942 to 1945, when Adolf Hitler implemented the final solution, the Nazi war machine was killing about 125,000 people a month on average for 3 years, right? And so, and the Jewish population pre-1939 was like 15 million all over the world. Iran has 95 million people, and the situation is that you have 5 to 20% a minority arm that has been oppressing a majority that is largely secular. It is a conservative country. I mean, people also drink. People like this. It is conservative, but it's not religious. It's a secular. Anyway, so we did a couple videos also. We did a video just explaining the conflict a week ago. People seem to like it, and it's in the news. People also were interested in our Venezuela piece. I know we did something on ICE in Minnesota. So, I mean, we are covering things and expanding our editorial. I mean, we're kind of going back to our roots because we actually started with, we started with, to be candid, like doing history and all that. And so we're going back to that,
Yeah. And so there's also been this issue with Canadian banks over the past week. And how does this all tie together? I know that with your project with the expos, you must be reaching out to banks and stuff like that. Do these issues complicate things for you?
So to be honest with you, no, but I'm very transparent because I'm sure there are some Expos fans who are like, wait a minute, if you're, it's a fair question. So first of all, I've always said that like my principles are going to not change. I am in this position to be able to bring back the Expos because my principles led me to be a hardworking, honest, yada yada, right? So if we're going to be candid, you don't get the things of Ash that you like, and then when I stick to my principles, if you don't like it, then you're like, you shouldn't do that,
Yeah.
like, so that already is like trash for me. That's not a good argument. Two, when I email. First of all, on X, I'm a bit more unhinged and crazy, but like,
well, isn't everybody? Isn't that's the place to do it, right?
Well, X is the asylum of the web. But let's break it down because this is big and this is what I want to bring it all together because this is what I actually like. I like this challenge, right? Mm-hmm. So one, it starts with my principles and then the purpose to help the city and to bring the team back. And again, like it's my professional education and experiences and competence that I could kind of matchmake, sequence, and package and ultimately execute, right? So it's like I'm very confident. But when the first time, like when I reached out to the World Economic Forum on regarding at Davos, they were going to bring in Abbas Araghchi, who's another propaganda member of the Islamic regime.
Yeah, and that was part of our video on the WEF also from last week.
Exactly, which we covered. So that I was a bit more like, fair warning. Again, no threats. And that's one thing I wish the Iranian community were not just throwing out the insults. Again, by the way, I'll talk about when I do curse. But my point is on X, I was a bit more like, the Drewski, like, hey man, fair warning, be careful what you're asking for because we are going to call you out. On LinkedIn, it was more like challenging them, saying, whatever your principles are, whatever, your mission statement and vision is and all that, sorry, I just want to approve. Okay, so it was more like respectful. But yeah, I do think Davos is a piece of trash globalist organization. Like, if I look at their track record, I don't give a damn about their vision. I've never been invited to Davos. I get invited to these boondoggles all the time. And yeah, like I don't really have any like desire to kind of, play that game. Now, when it came to Emory, I was extremely respectful to Emory, but it's what I call corporate governance jujitsu. Meaning, I'm not going to go and just hashtag. I'm not even going to go just to the dean because the dean is just an employee. And I don't mean that disparagingly, meaning they're caught between, protecting their students, protecting their teachers. And I also just full stop. I don't think money should impact politics and money should not really impact education. Mm-hmm. That's my principle. So when I see like University of Toronto, some stupid, kid who's like, we want, the Islamic Republic to keep fighting because what about Palestine? I'm like, yo, bitch. Yeah, it's not Iranians' problem. And, even many Arab states have given up on the Palestinians. And I've been, a steadfast supporter of any victim, any person. So the Palestinians as a even group, but as individuals, I sympathize for them. I question their leadership. I question why they're supporting Hamas. I don't think 10-7 was smart. And 2 years later, you can't say, anyway, but we're going on a tangent. Yeah. So my point is, with Emory, with Sephora, let's talk about Sephora as well, because Sephora, you could be like, isn't Miss Mojo a potential like partner? Yeah, we'll talk about that. But so what I'm getting at is, it's really just going to their board members and saying, I know what the role of a board is. I know all this nonsense about governance. And even if you have directors and officers insurance, yeah, if you bring to a board member a valid complaint, they have a duty to consider it and bring it to discuss with the executives, the CEO. So that's what I want the Iranians to kind of think of, because yes, when you do like the hashtags and when you at people, I mean, I'm on Twitter. I have access to our WatchMojo handle, but I'm on the Ashkan, my personal handle,
one, yeah,
personal one. So, and I'm not saying it's a junior person, but relatively speaking, you're getting some junior nochodim. Oh my God, I've been muted on Spaces. Sorry, oh my God, the whole time. No, that's really.
You said 07 was a mistake, and then.
Okay, good. Okay, all right. So now you can hear me. Sorry, we're also doing this on Spaces on X and YouTube. So
yeah, we're trying something new out for this. So there's bound to be some technical hiccups.
Yeah.
But okay.
So the point is that like an executive could just be like, I don't want to deal with this. Unless your responsibility is like customer service or relations. I emailed the banks. We're going to talk about that. So let's just go through them. So Emory was very respectful, and I even said it. I go, it's not up to me to threaten on any of that. It's just like I challenge you. Like, does this make sense that you're basically the equivalent of platforming? You're kind of lending credibility to this family. And I called them. I said that is bragging about killing these people. It's not some random IRGC junior guy who's maybe himself like not a victim, but kind of forced to kill people, as crazy as it sounds. So that was Emory. The banks was different. The banks for years, 2 years ago after 10/7, when I kind of started to go on Space to, actually listen to Palestinians. I mean, obviously we have Jewish communities here, but like, you don't necessarily talk politics. So I kind of wanted to go and listen. And then that dragged me into, as they call the tentacles, is Hezbollah, Hamas, but the head of the snake is, Khamenei. That's pretty clear. So when I started to go into these spaces where there was a lot of Iranians, and I know this like not surprised, disappointed, like made people suspicious is the word. I would sit in spaces by people who I didn't ask. I don't even read Farsi. I speak pretty well. فارسیم خیلی خوبه ولی نمیتونم بخونم یا بنویسم. So, which is unique in its own way. God bless Google Translate. But the point was, I wouldn't know what like the subject line was. So whether it was like Khamenei is our savior or the supreme loser, like okay, that I didn't know. Pretty quickly when they're talking, but it was interesting to be like, okay, there's all these people that are supporting of that, and it could be anti-West, anti-hegemony, whatever. But then I would go into these spaces with monarchists, and I was like, I'm in a time warp. Like, and I always thought, this is my own misconception. Growing up, when we left Iran, I was 5'6". I embraced the West. I mean, I'm super West. People will not say that he's not Iranian, but they're like, Ash is the most Khariji Iranian, like the most foreigner. And I am. It's true. My misconception was like 60, 40, 50, 70% of Iranians were for the revolution. And it was I've researched all this on X, click on articles. Whether it was 5% or 25 or 40 of the country's then 40 million, it was more that the Shah supporters stayed at home. Like there were some some like support. But it was mainly, okay, there was, let's say it was 1 million people on the street or more, wanting the revolution. Some people call it coup. And it just goes to show that like the mullahs have so domestic policy and foreign policy kind of crapped out. Oh, you still can? Jesus Christ, I think.
Yep, we just got a notification that Ash isn't, his audio isn't working on Spaces. So if you're listening over there, we're working on that, but it should still be good on YouTube.
Okay, I mean, it ended? Did I accidentally cancel? That sucks. Okay, I think doing 2 is I'm gonna restart. Okay. Well, it's just because I think my phone. I'm gonna try to keep it in my hand and move it, but we'll restart it. I'm sorry about that.
Sure. No problem.
Okay, if somebody could jump back there and give me a thumbs up, but I did restart it. So, oh no, wait, that's not what I'm doing. Okay, let's just focus here. Sorry for the technical difficulties. If you guys could just on like X just be like, here's a link to YouTube. If somebody could do that, if you don't mind. Yep,
Ivan, you able to jump on that?
So and if you could put it on the, just this is really raw. This is a real. If you could just sorry, I want to focus on your answers there. So with the banks, it was clear to me when I was on these spaces that a lot of Iranians were really upset about the IRGC, which had kind of now moved from just this military apparatus, but it was actually more of like an economic, it's a kleptocracy. The irony, Iran's a paradox. The same jealousy, resentment, frustration that some had against the Shah over, whether it was their wealth or whatever. A lot of Iranians now, more rightfully now, against the IRGC, they're like, these guys are looting, the wealth of Iranians that should go to them, to feed them, to serve power, to serve water, which Iran has problems with, which is ridiculous. And then you see like their kids living not just lavishly, but living like, lingo pache out. And like, it's fine. Like a woman can dress however she wants. But yeah, if you're then your dad back in, in the Islamic Republic is killing women. Now this, you could argue that the hijab stuff has gone down, where even to be fair, even some conservative women are like, yeah, stop killing women just because they want to show their hair. Yeah. But in 2026, this is like, we've moved on from that. It's not about the hijab. Like, and that is a red herring when like the Arzashi, the people that support the regime, when they come out and they're like, like women don't need to wear the hijab. I'm like, bro, it's 2026. Sure, maybe this started with like a merchant bazaar. And maybe there was a small percentage of like people that Mossad was like, hey, this is an opportunity for us to topple this regime that for 47 years has been saying death to Israel and death to US. But it was normal people, and you see the numbers, right? And that's why the music video with Shayad, or maybe I wanted to show some of those, victims. But so I kept hearing in these fazas, in these spaces, that IRGC money pisses us off. And the banks are taking it. It's basically, money laundering, and it is criminal to some. It's just some or a full extent. But again, when I say these things, I'm a business. You can't just accuse people,
Yeah.
So I reached out to the banks, and yeah, like RBC, Royal Bank of Canada. I used to work there from '98 to 2000 when I was at Concordia University, and Concordia also. I don't care anymore. Concordia keeps asking me for money. Yeah, stop fucking. Like platforming Hamas.edu, like what am I, it's like same thing with U of T, and like then it's like, well, who are these teachers that are indoctrinating, all these students to be like the West is bad, socialism is good? Yeah, did you see anybody from West Berlin go to East Berlin? Did anybody get on a raft in Florida to go to Cuba? Like, are you teaching these kids real things? And there are parts of socialism that I'm not along. I go, this makes sense. So it's just, I'm like, you know what? To bring it all together, I see oftentimes in the diaspora, the people that are opposed, it's like the hashtags at, Sephora. I'm like, no, you email their CEO respectfully. You don't call them, Jen Diz or something. I emailed them very respectfully. I knew one was actually born in Iran. She left. And the other one, when I was Googling her name, her email, I noticed her maiden name is Jewish, so I didn't even play that card, but I did say what I'm doing is no different than Edgar Bronfman Sr., who started he didn't start, he actually took over World Jewish Congress, and this is the message, and I'm just, every time I try to help, they just are like, suspicious or whatever, but I'm like, I'm taking all these templates, making them available. There's a folder online. You don't have to register. So if you want to take these emails, it'll inspire you, and then you could kind of just, and I always say, go to the board of these, go to the board of directors, go to the board trustees, don't insult them. It's not like an emotional thing, right? And so you have to just kind of challenge them, because then they do have to answer. So I emailed RBC, been a loyal client, and I emailed CIBC, I emailed TD, I emailed Scotia. I mean, I maybe not Scotia yet. So like, I'll give credit. CIBC replied, and they said, like, we have very robust, systems, yada, yada, which I commend them for replying, because, I mean, I emailed an executive, I emailed the CEO, actually, I emailed like 10 people the second day, because I was pissed that they weren't getting back to me, but it was Sunday. So I was like, give them till Monday. Yeah. So they did get back to me, to their credit. Now, concurrently, what's interesting is I've been getting a lot of emails from employees, and they're like, hey, they're basically, it's not whistleblowing per se. They're just telling me like, hey, I read your article. Oh, actually, a little parentheses. When I did this, I thought a lot of Iranians too, but a lot of like the overall community, like my network on LinkedIn, which not just challenged me, but criticized me, saying like, why are you like targeting some poor doctor? Again, daughter of, Heinrich Himmler. Let's put it into context who this is. But I got overwhelming support, like 100%. Now you could argue, well, nobody's going to criticize you saying why do you do it, but no, people do actually, like, hello there, like people do email me when they disagree with me.
Yeah.
And here they were like, no, this makes sense. Now I got a lot of Iranians who had never heard of me. It's all good. Never heard of WatchMojo, had no idea of any of this. Reach out, read, share. And a lot of people, handful right now, they were sending me like, hey, this is happening at other banks, to be fair. This is not CIBC, but they were like, like, this is happening. It's preposterous. And they were like, this guy is the son of one of the other Larry Johnny, same families. Now, I historically would have always like not attacked any Iranian because I didn't want to sit in the West and be like, my privilege, even if I disagreed with them. But for me, there was like a turning point, a red line after this. Like already going back the Mahsa Amini, like 22, that was a big change for me, for many, but like each time there is these crackdowns, Iranians become more militant, right? So this was beyond, like at this point, yeah, it's one thing, first of all, if you're a hypocrite and you're like, I love the regime, they're good, I hate America, and you're in Belgium, yeah, get the fuck out of Europe, you're like, all these countries are going to shit because of virtue signaling. You guys, seriously, not you, Rob, but you guys, that like you sit there when Mark fucking Carney, who I respect,
like who is you guys?
You guys is you like white, I guess Christian American, well, not American, like like the West prototype, who's like afraid to be like, wait a minute, is that scholar really saying that we're going to have more kids than you? So that's fact, like the Muslim scholar, but we're going to turn Canada into Sharia law. And you guys are afraid to call that out because you're afraid it's Islamophobic. I'm Muslim.
That's a whole can of worms right there.
No, but because you can't say that. You're afraid because your dear supreme leader here, Mark Carney, that overall I like and respect, he gets up there and he's like, Canadian values and Islamic values are the same. No, my friend, they're not. Because
it's not just Mark Carney. It's been this way for years and years.
All of them. He is just part of that globalist garbage. And I'm saying the reason January happened is 100% the marriage of Marxism and Islamism. And frankly, Islam alone is fine. If you want to be religious, fine. Go in your fucking home and do whatever you want. Don't shove it down my throat. Same thing with communism. Show me something that works. Again, as a Canadian, we are a bit more left than the US anyway. Yeah. I'm not one of these like, let's say fair capitalists. I think, people's greeds, you should watch out for those kinds of stuff. But if it's all connected is my point. And I will get back to the expos. I know I'm all over the place, but it is in my head. It's all connected.
We're getting closer to the theme of the episode, which is
activism.
Faux activism versus real activism.
Yeah, and so my point is, one of the frustrations of Iranians is, well, wait a minute, why is it that like, the leftist, pink hair, not a knock against lesbian, but it's like that prototypical caricature of like the person protesting who does not know Sabra Shatila. She does not know about the Nakba. She could not fucking point Palestine on a map, but she's either just anti-West, anti-Jewish, anti-Zionist, or she just is fucking paid by the Soroses. So it's all together, and they are fucking silent on Iran. So that's what I'm calling it out. Where's Greta Thunberg? Where is she? I want to know, where is Greta? Like that's a fair question. If you want to be this activist, where is George Clooney's wife? Again, I don't care. You don't have to say anything, Amal, but then shut your fucking face with your selective outrage. That's what Iranians are saying. Now, even my mom, she called me. She's like, I support what you're doing. She's like, but why do you swear on X? I'm like, that's the only place I could swear because everywhere else I have to be polite. Now, how does this all do it? With the bank, I still don't think it's right for me to be like, if you don't like fire this person, forget that he's the son of the IRGC senior. Like I'm telling you in general. I would never be like, I'm a client, I have resources. If you don't do this, then I pull it. Like that, I feel is like, okay, you don't want that in society. But I could be like, yeah, but you're not going to profit from my business then. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference between saying, okay, well, why would I give you my business? If CIBC that we work with sends me a note and says, we don't have this, and then I reply saying, but I am getting emails in general, to be fair, not CIBC, I'm like, So if I were to do like an online form, which I will do, saying whistleblowing, you're protected in Canada. If you know any like irregularities or questionable conduct at any banks, just send this in and I'll look into it. And again, Edgar Bronfman did this. Why is it that if, God forbid, somebody attacks the Jews, right away ADFL? If somebody attacks, any black person, fucking Sharpton is on the scene, And usually he's like extorting people, saying like, give us money or we're going to sue you. I'm not doing any of that. I'm just saying I'm allowed to use my platform and my reach and my willpower to do this. Now, Expos fans, all of these banks, I've already reached out to them. I love Quebec Inc. I'm proud. But just because I'm putting a bit of mustard on everything, Quebec Inc. is pretty useless in the Expos thing. And that's separate. Quebec Inc. asleep. But even if they were interested, these banks are mercenaries. But I'm not saying anything that's like unethical. I'm saying, are you aware that you're hiring this guy who is the son of a senior IRGC member who doesn't use his real last name on LinkedIn, whose profile is now hidden? Is he also still an employee? If you want to retain him, just tell me that you don't have a problem. If you say you don't have a problem, I have the right then to go to your board. And your board members, one by one, will start to, like in Rising Sun, distance themselves. Because even if they're legally protected under directors and officers or errors and omissions, they don't want to be like, yeah, we in 1942 were kind of, the Nazi party or funding the Nazi party or you know what I mean? So it is kind of like corporate governance jujitsu. Now, fair is fair. I have a lot, but this I just want to disclose to Expos fans. I already have 2-3 US banks that have kind of already told me that they want to be the bank of the Expos. They would also be interested in naming rights. So it's not this, but imagine Visa Stadium. What I want to convey, and I'm not going to go too much in the Expos, is don't worry. I do think about, Ash, what is the impact? If you really are like a servant leader, you do have to still have a responsibility to the city, Montreal, and the fan base who has kind of entrusted me, as I have a definite responsibility to my home country of Iran. I can manage that well. I'm a masochist. I like this stuff, right? So that I could manage. But I will not sell out on my principle. But I'm not saying it's related, but Quebec Inc. is asleep here. They're not really even in the mix, basically I have over the 30% that like private equity can invest and up to 100% of the stadium. That is more demand than we will need. I also have local high net worth individuals who are looking at investing. But really, as I alluded to last night, it's like a family office. Imagine this is not the team. Imagine you own the Seattle Seahawks of the NFL. You'd love to buy the Mariners, but the Mariners are not for sale. You don't even know Montreal and MLB as an opportunity, but you've already invested in some team in like La Liga in Spain. Yeah. I show up, servant leader, stakeholder. I'm here. I can invest. I can disappear. So my point is there is so much more of that profile that not a worry. And the banks, again, even if I tell RBC, yeah, you guys didn't get back to me or you're still hiring this guy, I'm going to shift all my business to CIBC, not to punish you, RBC, but to reward CIBC, then I'm allowed to. But if in 2 years I go to them, so long as I don't call Dave McKay the C word, he's their CEO, and I'm respectful. I understand he's got a good juggle of clients. This is a big accusation. Yeah. This morning I emailed my portfolio manager. It's a sizable portfolio. And I'm like, buddy, just as a heads up, this is the Expos thing. You had replied to me. And two, this just courtesy, I brought this to your CEO, again, the Drewski thing. But so long as you don't really cross a line, they're mercenaries. It doesn't affect them, and they're not even useful at all in Quebec. It's going to be like an American thing, and then Quebec, the Quebec Inc. is going to cry. So let's go back to, sorry, you got a question?
No, I was just going to, if you're wanting to transition to something else, I was going to say, let's zoom out a second and look at that we have a framework for 5 paths to advocacy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that because the whole thing is about activism. You mentioned people going and protesting for things that they really don't understand. There's even another level of more useless people whose idea of activism is changing their profile picture on social media. But how does change actually happen? What are the steps to get there?
Well, I mean, that's what I'm giving examples here, right? Like, my point is the protests do it. Like, if you want to be out on the street, it's visually very compelling, although I personally find it annoying and not effective. That's my opinion, The social stuff, again, it's going to like junior social media people who are just confused. Like, if you're the Sephora social media manager and yesterday 5,000 Iranians are calling you Madar Gharbim, like insults in the scope of the rainbow, you're like, okay, I don't even know what's happening here. I sent an email to their CEO and the head of Canada, and then I also basically shared that template as a Google Doc that anybody can take. But I'm also going to go to their parent, LVMH, and be like, hey, you are like a champion of women's, positive body, whatever.
Yeah, positivity.
And like, you have one of your makeup people who is one of the brands you support, who is like mocking the death of Iranian women. So I'm like, I just want to know, is this something you support? Put it on them. Now, if they're morons and they said they're not, they're obviously accomplished executives, but if they're like, yeah, this is all good, so they now evaluate it internally. So my point is, in the community, and I don't want to be like the Edgar Bronfman Sr. at all, but I'm just saying, okay, this is a world that I'm well versed in. And I feel like this effort would work better if it was like, okay, like I said, Iranians have been kind of orphaned for 47 years because the Islamic Republic kind of took over and, has really been a disaster for the country. I mean, their currency sucks and everything. But I'm like, you do need to be strategic, right? Like, instead of emailing the social media person 1,000 times, one email like that to the executive, one email like that to the board or parent company puts it on them to act. And we are in an era where, like, boards do want to kind of show that they're doing the right thing. So that's the third one, which I think is most. Now, I know the fifth one is the nuclear one. What's the fourth one in that article?
Sorry, we were talking about
the 5 ways of activism.
5 ways. The fourth one is discovery.
Okay, so discovery. So then I don't even know what the fifth one is, but let me explain discovery. So in legal, I find discovery is actually the most effective way to get companies to like act correctly. So let's say Bill Gates and Microsoft, he got nailed because during the deposition, when you sit and the opposing lawyer, basically asking you questions, some email was kind of discovered that basically suggested that Microsoft was a monopoly and it was abusing its position in the marketplace. That email was like an accidental finding during discovery. It was not like what the prosecution and the government was seeking. It just came out randomly. So if you're RBC and you're like, we don't have any issues and, we don't know what you're talking about, buddy. We don't take any money from IRGC sources. Let's say, and there would have to be grounds. Let's say you're like, okay, but the Canadian government views the IRGC as a terrorist organization. So fair, maybe you're going to argue that like one of the IRGC senior guys, his nephew maybe is not really family. We can't go after him. But I would say that his son or his daughter, I would assume, and by the way, this is why he probably doesn't use his last name, like geniuses.
Yeah.
I would assume that the government would object to that, right? So in a court of law, and this is why I would like more Iranian Canadian lawyers, like I'm well-versed in law, but I'm not a lawyer, who then could procedurally get it right and be like, okay, there's this law, you are taking money from the IRGC, you're saying that it's not breaking a rule, but we're going to basically go to court to determine whether or not like the son is, kosher or not.
Mm-hmm.
In the discovery stage, when a lawyer then cross-examines like the VPs at RBC, and I'm not going to name anybody, right? Just to be very clear, I want to give them the opportunity to reply privately. In that discovery, when you're deposing them, deposition, you then also go like, send me all of the emails, all of the communication. I used to work at RBC. You know how many hoops now as a client I have to jump through to just get like a wire from a company in Poland, a company in, Mexico? It's not like, sure, it's called know your customer, right? So after 9/11, for terrorism and stuff like that, banks generally have a trail. They ask you. And I know you probably don't like this I know your views, so you're like,
because I'm more anti-establishment type person.
Yeah, no, but you're like, why does the bank ask you why I'm taking out money or where it's got? Okay, well, the fucking Al Qaeda was sending money to one another and preparing to fucking take down buildings. That's why.
Sure. Yeah.
So I know high probability that if an Iranian Canadian were to take the time to look at the law, look at the wording and the procedural, and they file a lawsuit, which RBC, and again, I don't care anymore. Like Quebecing, you proved yourself to me, like your value. So, but again, you don't think in 2 years if the expos, like they'll buy the suites, and you don't think,
yeah, of course,
like it's like, okay, the Citibank would have naming rights. It's like, don't worry about it. That's
when the hard part is over, then
everybody. The hard part I thought, and we're day 60 and it's done basically. But so my point is, in the discovery phase, they would have to, otherwise it's perjury. They would have to share every email where an employee has talked about, hey, this is money from the Larry Johnny's papa being sent to the son. Do we accept it? Well, the dad is seen here with Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, the supreme loser. So if we just got a $300 million wire from some Iranian bank through Qatar or whatever, and it's going to his son, there is definitely thousands of emails, or not that, like hundreds across RBC. Like we're talking 50,000+ employees, and so in that RBC now is super exposed, allegedly. Like if this happened, which I've worked there. I mean, as a client, as an employee, these are questions they ask. So then they're now kind of taking on a lot of risk, and they don't want risk, and their board is like, what the hell? We pay all this insurance. We're Canada's biggest this and biggest that. That is really effective. So if Iranians are really, really pissed off that the world is ignoring them, that everybody has some de facto leader to, or group. And that was the concept of I called it the Human Dignity Project, but then afterwards I realized that name already exists. Dignity Project DP is probably not the best acronym. So then I was like, maybe the Dignity Initiative. But my point is, I'm going to just kind of it'll just be like a basic form or website with just these links to templates and attempts. So discovery and deposition, the threat thereof, is a really, really big hammer where then these big corporate giants would have to act, react, respond. Because right now, I just see everybody's insulting the Sephora people. And I'm like, I don't really think that's effective.
I know, but if I could just push back on that a little bit, PR is important to brands and companies too. And if everybody starts shitting on a company because of a decision that they made or whatever, and it's not a good look, and then their, sales drop, stock prices drop, everything goes wrong.
You're right. The pro-Palestinians are so proud that Starbucks is shutting down. First of all, it is so bizarre to target. I don't care about Starbucks. It's not like I'm Mr. Starbucks here. It is so bizarre to target Starbucks because they had just stores in Israel. You know what I mean? I don't really get that connection, but let's set it aside. Starbucks is just shelving a lot of stores because they overextended. With work from home, the reality has changed. They're getting out of bad, crappy deals that they might have signed in their expansion era. Meanwhile, Palestinians are still dying. But okay, you're boycotting, and they shut down 5 stores in Israel. I'm like, okay, that doesn't seem. I always used to tell the Palestinians, I'm like, you're not going to like this. Look at Israel, what's done in 75 years. Israel has its flaws, but in 75 years, they built a country. You guys in 75 years are on your 18th intifada. And
Yeah.
then meanwhile, the Arabs have sold you out, and the frustration bringing it back, Iran is paying the price, and Iranians are paying the price, and and they are fed up, and they should be fed up. And that's the thing. Like, I always told the Iranians who were opposed to the regime, I'm like, don't make fun of Palestinians, don't mock their injury, and even if you want to stand with like the Jewish people, I get that, I get the history, and frankly, the Jewish people are the only ones that are actually like standing up with Iranians, so it's I get it. But I was like, just say you're standing with Israelis. Don't say you stand with Israel. Not as a knock to Israel, but because it will be used against you, right? And that's what's happening. This was the Sephora thing where this American-Palestinian makeup entrepreneur basically was, mocking the suffering of Iranians. But I'm like, well, yeah, you guys for 2 years have been trashing and I criticize the Palestinians for the way they handle the conflict vis-a-vis Israel, but I've always sympathized with any human suffering. But yeah, when it comes to Iran, I'm 100% on the Iranian side, who are just fed up, and they're chanting, take that Palestinian flag and shove it up, where the sun don't shine, right? So it's pretty clear what Iranians are saying. So, but my point, just to go back, is obviously protests count, but I'm like, if you're not doing, the corporate governance jujitsu, and you're not understanding the tools that the law provides you, forget the lawsuit. It's more just what happens during discovery. What's the fifth one?
The fifth one is execution and follow through. Yeah,
execution is just taking the time, and that's the thing. Like, I'm a nobody. It's a community. It's not like, I don't think it was like my letter to Emery or whatever. But I do think, though, that if Iranians were smart, which they are, and they really wanted results, it would just be like, okay, this happened, Sephora, and then somebody kind of takes the lead. It's just, the group could be with anything. You need to be more organized. Because right now it's really just a lot of Iranians by themselves, obviously expressing sadness with what's happening back home, and then frustration.
Yeah. Digging into that protest point, though, like where do you find that protests help, and when do they harm a cause? Or is there like any?
Well, I'll be honest with you. In Montreal, for like a very long time, there was like a daily pro-Palestinian protest, which was really just an anti-Israel, anti-Jewish thing. Like in Toronto, they go and protest in like residential communities. I'm like, bro, go fucking protest at a consulate or embassy. But that's clearly not, I think, the spirit of the right to protest. So I do think that there's a lot of people. And it's clear that most of these protests are paid. I mean, these are like students sometimes. They're like, you don't have $5 to buy a coffee, but you have a $200 sign, and they all look amazing. It's like people are not
professionally organized.
It's a professionally organized thing. But so I do think that like every night Montreal turned into, intifada, in the 514. I mean, a lot of people were just like frustrated, and they're like, yeah, they start calling them terrorists and stuff. So I'm like, you're not really getting sympathy or empathy. And yeah, like even like at Concordia, when every day the students, I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's ask you a couple questions. Like, what year was the Nakba? Like name me why is Arafat born in Egypt? So it's like, there's a lot of stuff, but I just personally, I think it's like, yes, Israel, you could criticize Israel for the way it treats Palestinians. I think that's very fair. But it's like, look in the mirror, like 75 years, one side built a country, the other side, what do they have to show for it? That's agency. I mean, but I'm an entrepreneur. I'm like, leadership, I can do so much. You guys have to, this week I kind of let you guys have it because you did some stupidity that I thought was just like, it was insane how ridiculous it was. Then I moved on. But my point was like, yeah, it's like at the end of the day, I could write all the great, statements and mission statements, but it's people are responsible for their action, right?
Mm-hmm. On the flip side, why do you think faux outrage has become so dominant in society? Like we see people getting riled up about certain things, like really behind certain causes, and then silent on other things like Iran. Like why does that disconnect happen?
Well, we did the video today that we published. So last week we did the Iran conflict, just explaining it. But today I kind of addressed why. And it's basically that for, a long time, you do see the West trying to pander to like Islam is a religion of peace. Okay, Islam is a religion of peace the way I would make the best hair model, because Islam as a political tool is not at all a religion of peace. And I say Muhammad, and I'm a Muslim, right? I say Muhammad is the most effective leader of all time, hands on, because his conversion approach of you become a Muslim, and if not, you pay a tax. If not, I kill you. I enslave your woman. Well, yeah, the first generation's like, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. I'm part of the team. The next generation is a bit resentful, but they're like, I know why my dad converted, let's say. Mm-hmm. The third generation is like cope or rebel, and they're like these axis of resistance fanboys now, right? Which I find is hypocritical, because I'm like, why are you living in the West? So the West now has a reckoning, because they have to realize that Iranians are rejecting Islam. Full stop. It's not like the Bazaris and the merchants. Yeah, that was thing. It's basically the Islamic Republic has hijacked a country that used to be Zoroastrian, but all religion is fantasy. I mean, again, I don't mean to be disrespectful. It's just I've written about this there. So it's the Iranian people saying no to a religion that the West has kind of sanitized to look like it's super roses and hugs and kisses, because they are more critical of the media of like Jews and Israel. Now, where people I think miss the point is when they're like, the Jews control the media. So the Jews are overrepresented in media and finance because they could not own property, and they were banned from certain, like there's a historical reason. Usury is like frowned upon in, I think, in like Islam and other religions. That's why the Jews were like, hey, we're going to be in the money business. But it's like, we have people at the company who may disagree with my views, which have evolved over time, and I'm always open. I don't control what you guys write. We did a video on Minnesota, which I think is a good example.
I wanted to bring that up because Yvonne wrote a good comment in the chat here that Minnesota is a good example of how protesting can be effective. Okay, but let's be honest. The guy any loss of life is bad. I sympathize. I don't know it. But there's videos coming out of the guy who died, and I will never say he asked for it, but he was kind of looking for trouble. So you have to separate cause, principle and whatever. Yeah. So if this guy was not, at a hockey game, they put up his picture and he was booed after he died, right? So I'm just saying, yes, you could argue that protests are effective against ICE. Strike. If everybody strikes because they're offended that Donald Trump is attacking the Somalis, a strike could be effective, right? Well, but that's also because the protest is happening in the location where things are going down, and not a protest here about something that's happening on the other side of the world. There's the distance matters too.
There's a lot of factors, but I'm just saying it should be clear now that generally protests are fake. Not fake in that they're not happening, is it a mirage, but that it's like, oh, look, these people are paid, they're not necessarily earnest, hitting the street every day. The organizers are clearly an agenda. The organizer is a professional protester. They don't care about the cause. Somebody, the Soros, the Open Society, like it's the dark Sith lords of, the universe are there. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that are kind of like the puppets, the marionettes, kind of getting these people out. And they're like, from the river to the sea, whatever. I mean, okay, which river, which sea? And I guarantee you, 99% of them are kind of morons. So it might lead to something. Now, related to this is something that I want to push. And again, if anybody wants to help me make this into law, it's called the Cork Act, not with a K, but with a C. It's credible or not corrupt. It's like basically, Jesus Christ, I've been writing.
Credible or compromised citizen, journalists, and influencers.
Yeah. Well, there are some people online, and you're like, okay, there's like nothing against Pakistanis at all. Pakistanis are fine people. There's this like couple of, it's funny. It's like the world of X, which is like the asylum. there was like a couple of Pakistani British gals who are very pro-Palestine, and that's their right. But they're really, really also very critical and mocking. They're basically mocking Iranian women and their suffering. And so at some point, I was like, why are you this obsessed with Iran? I was like, I understand that you're pro-Palestine and you are afraid that if Iran is Iran again and not the Islamic Republic, that, yeah, maybe you're not going to get money to the Palestinian cause. But I'm like, you know, you should be covering the UK turning into a shithole, or matters in Pakistan where you're from. But okay, you're not Pakistani in that sense. You live in the West. But I'm like, it's really insane how every day you're just, you know, the Islamic Republic stands again. And so I was like, okay, it was the inspiration, nothing against them. So I was like, the same way that like we have to disclose if a video, there's a brand deal in it, and lobbyists, you could tell who IPAC, the Israeli lobby, pays which politician to the dollar. You could tell which universities get money from Qatar. So let's kind of criticize both sides to keep it fair. But I'm like, if you are like a citizen journalist, an online influencer, if you're just your conviction, you're just blasting one side or another and you're credible, I commend you, even if I disagree with you. But if you are effectively just getting paid by a lobby, by a PR firm, and that is why you're saying these things, you're also influencing a lot of young kids, like that moron at the University of Toronto, which I talked about, where he's like, oh, the Iranians must suffer because of Palestine. No, fuck you. How about I come and, you know? So I'm just saying, like, already these losers can't get jobs, and now they're going saying these stupid things. Who the hell's going to hire you, moron? Now, maybe that's your principle, but is your principle based on facts, or is it, you know, that's not what the Iranian people want, so their say doesn't matter? That's why I go, it's all related, right? And advocacy, I'm doing that with the expos as well. I'm representing the city. I'm not like a Molson, a Brofman, a Desmarais. I know them. I've met them. I've had lunches with some. We've looked at deals with others. Like, I am not in that clique. So instead of trying to be chummy with people that are in their own world, I'm always going to be more for the underdog and the people. But instead of like doing like some kind of fan thing where we're like blasting MLB, I'm working behind the scenes, talking to investors, talking to strategics. I mean, I'll say it. I went up to Google on our 20th anniversary, and I said, I wouldn't be here without YouTube. Do you guys want Google Stadium? Do you want your tech, Android, Google Maps powering the new stadium? Do you want the rights to sell the naming, you know, the sponsorships? And I'm like, if you don't want it, I'll bring it to your competitors, Samsung, Microsoft, Apple. And they know. They're like, it's great that Ash is bringing it to us first, but we also know that if we don't take it, he's going to go to our competitors.
Yeah.
You know, I went to Sony and I said Japan. It's because I had a good contact there. I said Japan, baseball. I said, and also I said, you guys are not a distribution company like the way, you know, a Bell Media or Rogers is. But I said, do you guys want to be the studio? And then we'll do Willpower, Mojo Rising, a documentary with you guys. And he's like, Ash, we don't usually invest in sports clubs. But he's like, I like the story. Let me bring it to my boss, who's the number 2. But I told him, I said, again, no hard feelings. If you don't want it, I'll go to Samsung. But I said, I rather Sony, just on the Japan factor. I mean, I like both Samsung. So, you know, that's all corporate jujitsu. And they know. And it's like, it's not like I'm going up to a girl and being like, you're my girlfriend, but if you don't like come with me somewhere, I'm going to go shack up with somebody else. In corporate, they're all mercenaries.
Yeah, it's par for the course. Like that's pretty business, isn't it? So let me just shift gears for a second. So relating back to the Iran situation and how we discussed the kind of reaction or lack thereof, like in the West, if you could send a message to Donald Trump about this, what would you tell him?
Donald Trump. Well, actually, here's what I would say. To be fair, President Trump, I called your victory in 2016, and I also said 2024 would be yours to lose. You're not perfect. Nobody is. But I totally understand why he wins. And so I think with Iran, there used to be this stigma when anybody even reached out to, pause that if you don't mind. Load up the articles load up the 3 articles that I wanted to touch on. We didn't get to, but they fit well here about Trump. So there's a couple of articles that I just want to reference. So before, if anybody would dare reach out and say, US help us or Israel help us, the regime supporters were like, oh, treason, treason. Well, I think the fact, President Trump, the fact that Ali Khamenei has killed on his orders tens of thousands shows that he is the traitor, that he is not Iranian, clearly, and he does not represent the people, and the people, 80% do not support the regime. They are, when the families, and you should watch the video we did today, because all of these videos, I was up all week, like finding all these videos. So they are chanting like death to Khamenei as they're picking up, the bodies of their, deceased kids. So the first one is America, Donald Trump, Iranians do support you and want you to act, not because the world is cop. And I don't even want to guilt trip you, President Trump, in saying you told them help is on the way. It's abundantly clear that they are building the biggest military presence in the Gulf, in that area, much more than even the Gulf War. So it's going to come. And I used to think personally, I was like, obviously you don't want Iranians to suffer, but I was like, the IRGC bases and the Basij bases, like the cops that were cracking down, those are, if that is the baton with which, forget the baton, if that is the weapon and the bullets with which 50,000, 30,000, even the 3,000 Iranians have died, then those are fair game. And it's listening to the Iranians who are basically like begging now for help. So I thought that's what they were going to do. But most likely, I think, and Yvonne, you could show the other 2 videos. I do think that they're going to probably just destroy everything that is military. Now, the threat, President Trump, Iran is not Iraq, Syria. It's not like a Sykes-Picot kind of creation that, France and British, decision makers just carved up, where in Iraq, it's like, we're Sunni, we're Shia. In Syria, it's like, we're Alawites, it's just like those places lack identity. And yes, if there's not a strong man like Bashar al-Assad or Saddam Hussein, they will kill each other, and the proof is in the pudding. Iran, the only reason why there is some element of frustration amongst the Baluch, which is lower, what you're seeing, that lower east side, and a little bit the Kurds, but they're very different if you break it down, is because the Islamic regime is so brutal on those 2 ethnicities of note. But even the Kurds in Iran are Iranian. They identify as Iranian. Now, I got a lot of heat for saying I still would listen to the people that might be speaking about, we want something, but that is a red line with Iranians, and I understand that. But my point is this threat that, Iran would turn into Libya or Syria, President Trump, is not true. Absolutely not true. When the regime is gone, yes, and I've read it myself. The Jerusalem Post every 2 months talks about separation. I would call them out, and I would tell the opposition who are monarchists, I'm like, are you aware that, you guys, that's your red line. Your buddies here in Tel Aviv are talking about separation. Why don't you call them out, right? But it is also naive to think that Israel, and no country is a monolith, right? Like the majority of people probably don't want to get rid of Bibi Netanyahu, right? But I do think, though, that Israel's official policy is not going to be to replace a crazy, hostile Islamic republic with like an unstable multiple states, many of which would also still hate Israel. You understand? So it's not true. I think if you eliminate the Islamic Republic, there will be, that's why I call this not just a counter-revolution. Yeah, keep this up. It's not just a counter-revolution. It is a restoration of Iran identity. Again, I have nothing that's Muslim. I am Muslim. I mean, I'm more atheist agnostic, but as I get older, spirituality, well, I'm not going to convert to Christianity personally. Zoroastrian is cool, but Zoroastrian is not just good words, good deed, good thoughts. There's a lot in there. If you really get into it, then I'm like, yeah, that also doesn't make sense to me. But that's not the point. The third one, President Trump, is this notion that if you kill Khamenei, the Ummah will rise up. Nonsense. First of all, Iranians are Shia minority. There are some Shia in Lebanon. There's definitely Shia in Iraq. A lot of people in Iraq and Lebanon and Syria hate this guy because him and his tentacles, Qasem Soleimani, the day Trump killed him, that day, they call it Cutlet Day. You know, he turned him into a cutlet, like a burger. And I know cutlet is not a hamburger, so I'm just explaining that for our American friends. But the point is, they celebrate in Iran. They literally drink alcohol, have cutlet. They toppled his statue. They burn his statue, right? And Muslims generally, many of them don't even like Shia. So yes, they have to say, we are the Ummah, we are brothers, and if you kill Khamenei, and by the way, I'm not for the killing of anybody. I would much rather he basically is under the equivalent of like house arrest and like go teach religion somewhere. Because if you kill him, he becomes a martyr.
Yeah.
So nobody misunderstands here. I'm not fanboy. Like, Israel can do what it wants to do. The US can do what they want to do. So my thing is, you would be supported. And I do want to say one note so people don't blast me. The MEK has rebranded itself. Donald Trump, President Trump, Secretary Rubio, Vice President Vance, MEK has no support amongst Iranians. They sided with Saddam Hussein. They pay Mike Pompeo. They pay Rudy Giuliani. They are seen as bad as the Islamic Republic. I will admit, like way back say, I know the history and what they did is wrong, but is there not a path to say we don't forgive or even forget, but we need to just say we're Iranians? But I know that is not, again, I grew up in the West, right? So it's kind of like I'm almost like a mediator saying, I used to think that, but I agree that the MEK is a red line. So I don't think, however, that they are riskless. Because as you saw in Iraq, the Ahmad Chalabis, there are people that come and package themselves as something that they're not with support. So I'm just saying, Iranians have to be careful about the MEK being like, oh, we're going to go in. Trump, Team Trump has made us like the transitional leader. So that is, the Iranians have to, and lastly, I'm an entrepreneur. I don't like heredity-based systems. I have nothing against Mr. Bronfman or Mr. Molson. Keep it on this. I have nothing against these people. I actually respect born on third base people who are like ambitious and work. Pierre Carpelado, he's like works like me. He's like, everybody always goes, he doesn't need to work. Like, he's a billionaire, but he works so hard. So I'm not knocking them, but it's like, I won't lie. These were people that I'm kind of the opposite, right? So to me, it's kind of hereditary-based systems make no sense. They're not efficient. But this is not Succession on HBO. I also understand, and this is a pretty good letter, people seem to agree, I understand why the US's history of supporting, Jimmy Carter used to support the Shah, and then he pulled support at the Guadalupe. They toppled this guy's dad. Iranians betrayed his dad. That's what people should know. Iran should look in the mirror itself. There was the Iranians who ultimately betrayed the Shah, more so than the Americans, regardless of what Iranians think. The Crown Prince does have support. If I was doing like an executive search as an investor and I needed to hire like a chairman for a company, that's not an operator role, right? That's like an ambassador. That's what the Crown Prince and the kingdom and Shah, which I personally don't, but the history of Iran is intertwined with monarchy. But the Islamic Republic is a republican name. It is an autocratic theocracy. And they've done such a bad job because it's a kleptocracy, a kakistocracy, that the next generation, the generation that toppled this gentleman's father, imagine if the immediate next generation and their kids are like, you guys so poorly handled the country for 47 years that we want to reject the republic. Let's go bring back a constitutional monarchy, not an absolute, a constitutional monarchy, and let's go and support the son of the guy that you guys, like, kind of your parents toppled. That's the extent to which the Iranian majority hates it. Now, the reason why I do support the Crown Prince is because I think it is a process of elimination, but he's also been constant. He's been consistent. There are details where, sure, 5 years ago, again, I understand if facts change, you're allowed to modify it. But that vision and that through line has been pretty consistent. So I understand why President Trump cannot publicly come out and be like, the Crown Prince is our guy, because I'm not hiring a CEO here. That's what I think the people that are like, well, Reza Pahlavi is a failed son, he hasn't done anything. I'm like, okay, he's not going to go like become a VP at Citibank. You know what I mean? Like he could do the think tank stuff like for 47 years, but okay, like that's kind of a weird knock, but I don't think the Iranians are like, he should be hired to sit there and set the price of oil. It's just that there is nobody else. Like for 2 years, I've said to everybody, I've said it to the reformers who are like, oh, who basically are supporting the same system and hoping that things change. I would sit there with them, and this is what people thought I was like a reformist, which was like a bad word there with the crazy Iranians that I love. But they were like, Eswa Talab. And I was like, I don't even know what that means, bro. But to land the plane, it is not like you're hiring like a CEO to come and set the price of oil and do these things. You need somebody that could kind of, even tell the people that are fed up with the clerics and the mullahs to be like, well, I mean, this is what I would hope, saying, okay, try not to go kill now all the religious people. Like, I know they did wrong to you, but it's time for, the bloodshed to stop. And let me just land it here. This is like, there are parallels between the Expos and the Iran, but it's like I could emerge, and people were like, we didn't even know who you were. You came out of nowhere. That's why nobody really goes, is this PR? Because I'm like, well, if
about the Expos, yeah.
About the Expos, because I'm like, if I was seeking PR, you would have heard about me. I'm not some charlatan there. So, but I could just go and be like, okay, these are my credentials. And I've been very transparent because also I'm like, I don't want people thinking I'm doing this to get money or whatever for myself. So I could just come up, and if I just show the people, they trust me, they back me. And as I said, Mr. Bronfman, if he wants to get involved, he knows where to find me. Our dogs play together. You know what I mean? Like Jeff Molson, I'm sure I'm banned. But if he wants to be like, okay, your ideas are, I've sent some really good ideas to Jeff Molson. It's just Jeff Molson, he's like the Vatican. He's like the crown prince. Like Jeff Molson is like, he wakes up, it was his destiny to own, and he, to his credit, went out and got the funding to buy the Canadians. So why would he go and buy like a baseball team where he's like, this is like, I was top dog. Now I'm like, just asterisk and nochodi, right? So people don't understand that. But if I were to go, and again, I have zero interest to live in Iran forever. I would maybe visit at some point, obviously. I wouldn't mind if the regime changes. But I have zero political. I've said so many things purposely to ban. I'm also maybe going to start a political party because I feel in Canada, the Liberals and the Conservatives, we could do that next week.
Yeah.
And that was more just an idea because I was like, do Canadians feel represented by Liberals and, the Conservatives? Because I'm like, these are two now just crazy parties that neither make sense. But that's next week if you want.
Sure.
But if I were to come and be like, dear people of Iran, I am your leader. I am going to go. And now point the video of the Nima guy. So I saw this, and I'm not surprised. There are a lot of Iranians who live in America, and just, you don't need the video. I think the idea was he was like, President, and that's it. I just wanted to reference it. So he's like, there's 2,000, and in the threads, there was a lot of Americans who were like, yeah, we're also fed up of seeing all these Iranians die. I don't think it's going to be a boots on the ground situation. Okay, you could take this off there. The point I'm making is if I were to come, best intentions, ability to mobilize, be like, that guy's like the de facto commando, head. Iranians would not support me. Nothing against me, but they just are distrusting because of the intervention by, over the years, after Alexander the Great burnt Persepolis and took over ended the Achaemenid Empire. It's been Greeks, Romans, Arabs, Mongols, Turks, Russians, British, and American, hence the Khua revolution. I used to tell the hardcore regime fans, I was like, the more your government, the Islamic Republic, oppresses the Iranians, America will hesitate having boots on the ground because they have the trauma, not just of Vietnam, but Iraq. But they're just going to destroy all your military. They're going to destroy your oil if you don't, these people don't leave, to lead to defections, right? the idea is, okay, it's not, if you kill Khamenei, it doesn't really change anything, because the IRGC, yes, they are under the Vilayat Faqih, they are under the clerics, but if Khamenei dies, there's going to be a bit of a vacuum. I would assume more of a military coup. But if you just destroy all that infrastructure, there will be more defections, and then they'll get the message that, you know, anybody, and Israel kills like 10 of them, you know, every 6 months now. So people are going to be like, yeah, maybe that's not a job promotion I want. There might be a job opening because the other guy got kotlet, but I don't really want that, right? So that's the approach that the regime would take. But if I were to come out and be like, I'll do this, I'll organize, I'll be your liaison, the American people are like, okay, this guy looks credible. And by the way, Khamenei and Arzashid, this is not what I'm just illustrating the appeal of the Crown Prince. They would still be like, no, we want the Crown Prince. And I'm like, I have the track record. You understand? Mm-hmm. Whereas like with the expos, nothing against Mr. Bronfman, nothing against Jeff Molson, people just understood that, yeah, Ash is right. The days of one guy signing a $2 billion check for a team are done. Stephen Bronfman's not going to sit down and get along with PE funds. You know, and so to wrap it up, very weird, but there is this like interest. Oh yeah, I'll land this. You know what the craziest thing is? Sam Bronfman is one of the OG entrepreneurs that Montreal produced. One of his sons, Charles Bronfman, brought the Expos to Montreal in 1969. His other son, Edgar Bronfman Jr., took over World Jewish Congress, and he kind of helped the Jews get justice. So these are two things that, you know, to me make a lot of sense. I mean, when we started Context before the pandemic, these were the kinds of things that, you know, Context was going to cover. We're living it. And so, you know, what is fiction, what is real is very strange. And
hard to figure out.
So, yes, and this is the final point on this. Yesterday, we announced WatchMojo Studios relaunched. Mm-hmm. So one of the shows, one of the series I'm developing is kind of like Field of Dreams meets Moneyball, based on what's happening with the expos.
Cool. Great story. Well, a lot of information today, a very heavy episode.
Very heavy.
But we started by you know, playing a little bit of music from the Aria project that you're working on, and maybe we can end on that as well. I think we got a couple of music clips. So just to set the context, these are reimaginings of Iranian classic songs.
Yeah, and so this being public domain, you know, the lyrics, I translated them in the summer, and you know, these are demos, but if anybody's interested, just on my X account, I'm sharing these as they come out. And then we could ride out with the next one, which is if you go down to the third one, and then we could write out the show. That's another classic public domain, very heavy songs. All right. All right, thank you.
Cool, great stuff.
Thank you.
Talk to you next week, Ash. Have a good one. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Sing your song, renew my pain once more. With a fiery sigh, break this cage, shatter it down to the floor. Oh, nightingale, break free from prison, sing of you.